Hello, my fellow wealth hackers, and welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. My name's Erwin Cito, and I trust everyone is having a great summer. I know I am, as this past weekend, Cherry and I golfed 9 holes with rent-to-own investors Rachel and Neil Oliver of Clover Properties. They've done hundreds of rent-to-owns as their preferred strategy of investment. These properties typically need less renos. Tenants take better care of the properties as the tenants treat it like their home. The downside, however, is one's returns are capped, but the returns are still great. We played scramble style, which means we all hit a ball, and then after each stroke, we as a group choose which ball is in the best position, best location, then we all hit from there. For example, on hole number 2, 3 of us lost our ball off the tee, and Cherry put hers on the green. So logically, our second shot was from on the green. We all putted from Cherry's ball's location. Cherry tends to do that, outplay me in golf. Playing scramble is easier as it's less overall strokes. The game takes less time. It's much more fun for beginners and non-golfers, as there's less pressure for each golfer to perform. We had a blast catching up on real estate, business, family, vacation/retirement plans. I personally always feel energized when I hang out with positive, growth-minded, like-minded people. We, of course, shared our mutual challenges as landlords and business owners. No, it's not always easy, but we wouldn't change a thing. None of us as a group are meant to be employees. Success never comes easy. It's just less hard, though, to be a successful real estate investor in my experience and my clients' experience. One very common challenge for everyone is determining the value of a property. So I'm talking about real estate investors here. I think all of us, and also dealing with the rising market, none of us want to overpay. So here's my truth about real estate investing. At the time of each property's acquisition, my own acquisitions, and I've had ownership or partial ownership of around 40 properties. I felt I overpaid for the property at that immediate moment. I felt I overpaid every single one, including when I was working as an agent for other investors. But I am investing for the long term based on long-term economic fundamentals. When I paid $240,000 for my daughter's bungalow with a blank offer back in 2014, I had to beat out 3 to 4 other offers by paying the most money. I paid the most money, so kind of by definition, I overpaid. We've invested around $150,000 to renovate that house. Two separate renovations. One to make it a student rental. The second time to make it to make the basement a legal basement apartment. We've since refinanced that house to take a bunch of capital out, and in today's market, that house is worth well over $800,000. I know market price, what the market prices are, because Cherry and I had to pay market price to purchase our duplexes last month. We closed on one last Friday. The other one we closed next month. And in hindsight, the plan has worked out based on, and it's just put simply, right? The world's central banks, so the people who control the supply of money for every country, like the European Union has one, Bank of England, Canada, the Fed in the US, they're all continuing to create more money out of thin air. So sadly, hard assets like housing will continue to get more expensive. Anyways, in the show notes you can find on my website, www.truthAboutRealEstateInvesting.ca, I've shared a post from a gentleman named, I don't know him personally, but I spend a lot of time on Twitter researching, but a gentleman named Gus, pardon me Gus for massacring your last name, Papa Nue. He posted a great Twitter string on how to prepare a very good comparative market analysis. Short is CMA. So that will help you determine a property's value. So again, the link is on our website. It's way too hard to give you the Twitter address. So again, it's a Twitter string on how to prepare a really good comparative market analysis so you know what a property is worth, and it factors in the current temperature of the real estate market. So speaking of real estate, we have one of our real estate clients on the show today to share expertise and experience, as always, because we want to grow our mastermind. If you don't know what a mastermind is, it's a group of like-minded people who share and support one another. And today's guest recently wrote a book titled The Indispensable Survival Guide to Ontario's Long-Term Care System. Yeah, that's a mouthful. I just had to say it. So my question is, I always have questions because I'm naturally an inquisitive person, and that's kind of led me down this path to do all right in real estate and stock hacking and whole life insurance and running a business. Anyways, so the general question is, and I asked this of myself, the question is, what are your plans when you're beyond the age of 65? Now, if you're listening to this show, then you're an investor, and by definition, you're planning for the future. Many real estate investor clients of mine, they invest in real estate to retire their spouse or pay for university for their kids. Something some haven't considered is long-term care for aging parents or for themselves, like long-term care for themselves. And I personally don't want anyone to be blindsided by this inevitable expense. Hence, we're inviting Karen coming back on the show. Karen is a professional journalist. She's even traveled to and covered the Olympics. She's also a teacher. So by nature, she's a researcher and a seeker of truths. And she loves to share. So she's here today to share her challenges in placing her own mother in a long-term care facility. The range of costs for these services and the type of services you can get. And of course, and for my own benefit, I kind of want to know what, resort style, like how nice can it be? How nice can a long-term care home can be? And she lets me know what kind of budget we're talking about. And of course she invests in real estate and she stock hacks to be able to afford to plan for her own future, because we'll all probably end up in a long-term care home, or for those who are lucky enough, you'll be able to afford to pay for a personal care support person to come to your home and take care of you there. Both don't come cheap. So that's why we're doing today's show, to prepare you for those expenses. And I trust you will enjoy the show. And I'd like to welcome Karen Cumming on the show. Just quickly, to follow Karen Cumming, really easy to find her. Go to KarenCumming.com. And her book is available on Amazon. It's a mouthful, Indispensable Survival Guide. Indispensable Survival, yeah. It's in the show notes, folks. Thanks, enjoy the show. Hi, Karen.
Erwin, it's so nice to be here.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. We haven't seen anyone in a while, it feels like.
Pandemic thing. Mm-hmm. Even though some people don't think it's real. But we're not going there.
That's another story.
We're not going there because people that have been affected. I'm sure a lot of your research has led you to people that have been affected. But what's keeping you busy these days?
Oh boy, so much, Erwin. I've just recently recovered from hip surgery, and some of the complications that can sometimes come from hip surgery. And I just feel kind of like refreshed and renewed and really appreciative that I can walk without being in chronic pain. It was the first time I'd ever experienced pain in my life. And for as hard as it was, I'm happy that I went through it because I feel like I have deeper empathy for other people who are in chronic pain. It's not a nice situation to be in. And I'm thankful that it's done.
Are you still in pain?
Nope.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic, yeah.
Okay. And can you talk a bit about, because I'm always, it's just natural in me, I'm always interested in like cause, effect, and then what are the lessons learned?
Sure.
So what caused it?
Mine was caused by osteoarthritis, which is degeneration of the bones. So at a certain point, your hip joint is just it's grinding. It's bone against bone, and you have to have it dealt with. And so it's fascinating to watch these orthopedic surgeons when they do an operation. I actually went on YouTube after I got out of the hospital because I was so curious to see what did they do to me. Totally fascinating. They make like a 4-inch incision and they literally cut the joint out of your body, hammer a titanium ball joint back in, and stitch you back up again. And you are walking that afternoon.
You're walking that afternoon?
It's amazing. Yes.
Right. And then how long the pain lasted for?
You know what? The second the operation is over, my experience was all the bad pain is gone and it's replaced by the good kind of pain, which is the healing pain, which takes, it takes time for it to, all the muscles to knit back together again.
Right.
But yeah, I was astounded at how miraculous it was.
Any delays with this whole fake
Oh, I was so
pandemic,
lucky.
right?
I was so lucky. I was one of the last people on the last day that Joseph Brand Hospital in Burlington was open to assess people, to be assessed as a candidate. That was in the middle of March of last year. And I got in for my operation on October 22nd last year. So that was astounding.
And then, what are the lessons if everyone wants to avoid osteoarthritis?
You can't.
Osteoarthritis.
Arthritis.
Okay, yeah.
You can't avoid it. It comes with aging. It's different from rheumatoid arthritis. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. Osteo is just the degeneration of your bones and sometimes your spine, your joints. And at a certain point, if the joints are what they call bone on bone, there's nothing else you can do but to have the operation.
I thought I've heard stuff. Maybe I was watching Oprah or something years ago. Weight training doesn't help.
I'm sure that things like all kinds of sports. I used to run years ago. I'm sure that didn't help it. Anything that puts pressure on the joint is not a good thing if you have osteoarthritis, and it can accelerate it.
Okay. That's why I ride a bike.
Yeah,
I don't run.
Good choice.
It's just I like to research stuff just like you do. From my research, I'm gonna get some hate for this, but people were not meant to run long distances, right?
I hear you. Right. And if you talk to runners, they say the most astounding things. Their doctors will advise them to stop running, and they will keep running. I couldn't imagine doing that, but I think they're a special breed of people. Yeah. Some
people are gifted, like we're talking about the Olympics before this.
Olympics, yes.
But I've read like the sweet spot is like 3 mile or 5K.
Right? Not 20.
Yeah, not 20.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a little overkill. Yeah. And, if we truly hunter gatherers, we were meant to do a short sprint to chase something. Hopefully, you get it. You're not running slow pace after an antelope or something.
That's my speed. Yeah, slow pace.
But you'll never catch the antelope.
No, we wouldn't. We'd wind up catching the groundhogs and the rabbits and things like that.
All right. So this is a real estate show. So, but there's so many things that triggered me to want to have you come back on the show. And the last time we had you on the show, we talked a lot about long-term care centers, homes, and how. Can you tell us what triggered you to start researching long-term care homes?
Absolutely, yes. It was in the fall of 2018. Our mom, Verna, she was 98 years old and living in what they call an assisted living facility. And what that means is that you live in a suite of your own, and you get help from the PSWs, the personal support workers, to do the daily tasks of life. So they help you dress, they help you with your laundry, they help you if you need help in the washroom, that sort of thing. And you are in a facility that has a dining room. You go to have your meals 3 times a day, but the rule is that you have to be able to get to the dining room on your own speed. You have to be mobile. And one day our mom woke up and she realized that she couldn't walk. And when you can't walk, you can no longer live in an assisted living facility. Why? Because the PSWs contractually are not allowed to help you walk. They can help you do anything else, but if you can't walk, they can't help you do that. So what that means is that, surprise, you have to move to a long-term care facility. And I think what catches most families off guard is they're not expecting it. They just feel like, isn't this a great situation? I'm sure our mom or our dad is going to be here until the end of their lives. We have nothing to worry about. And then all of a sudden, boom, out of left field comes something like this. They can't walk, or maybe they get a disease, they get ill, they have to go into the hospital and then into long-term care.
Slip and fall.
To anything can happen. And it just, you realize in a flash, you realize that you are totally and completely unprepared for what is coming because you haven't researched it. That's it. So when this happened, this was the beginning of our journey through the long-term care system. And I feel so fortunate that my sister and I did it together, because a lot of people are perhaps only children and they have to figure it out all on their own, which is, even more stressful than it is when you've got somebody else to help you. You tear out your hair on a daily basis because you're dealing with bureaucracy and you're dealing with people who have never educated you, the general public, as to how the system works. The government hasn't educated us. There are no health promoters out there educating us because there's no budget for that kind of thing. Nobody knows how the system works until they're smack dab in the middle of it. And then by then it's almost too late because you're under so much stress that your brain can only handle so much. And on top of all the stress of having to make these decisions that you're totally unprepared to make, you don't have the information that you need to base those decisions on. So after our mom passed away after 3.5 months in long-term care in February of 2019, and after she passed away, I'm a freelance journalist, and I really felt strongly about writing her story so that other families could not only read about what happened to us, but that we could offer them advice. You know, here's what happened to us. Here's what we suggest you start doing right now. And so I did that. I wrote a feature article that appeared in the Hamilton Spectator. And we had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people wrote us and said, hey, thank you for this because nobody else is helping us. And we just decided that there was room out there for a book that would be, as the title is, The Indispensable Survival Guide to Ontario's Long-Term Care System. We wanted to write a book that would help families be proactive and prepared. That is the key message throughout the whole book. We must do our homework now. We have to be proactive and prepared for what lies ahead in the future. Because if we're not, it's disaster. It's emotional disaster. It's, it could be financial disaster. So many people have no idea how much money is involved, not only in going into a retirement home or into what they call assisted living, but long-term care. And on top of that, everything that's been happening during the pandemic, all of these terrible stories coming out about, the flaws in the system and how the system itself was completely unprepared for the virus. I think what that has done is that it has made people twice as nervous, twice as apprehensive about ever wanting to even think about it or talk about it or pick up this book and start reading this book. It's human nature to put off what makes us uncomfortable. And I think the virus has really exacerbated this whole situation, unfortunately. And my hope is that we're going to find our balance again, and people are going to realize that, once we've dealt with the virus, these problems are still going to exist. They haven't gone away. Our government has not done what it needs to do in order to make that system what it should be. And I have no issue with calling them out on that.
Our government let us down?
It's shocking, isn't it? I know.
I never would expect this.
Never in a million years.
Right. So
and they continue to.
And so we should rely on ourselves?
Well, that's
shocking too.
It is shocking, but something we need to come to terms with.
Seriously?
I know.
Can't someone else just take care of us?
Wouldn't it be nice if somebody else could just take care of us? But it's not going to happen.
No one's going to come to save us?
No. No.
I'll stop there. Actually, my first thought was that when you said your article was in the Hamilton Spectator, no one else picked it up?
Well, it was a feature article, so it was really like a human interest story, I think. Yeah.
Because it needs to be talked about.
Well, I mean,
so I'm a business person, right? So yes. I think if the book doesn't already exist, if the book doesn't exist, then the article likely doesn't exist in other spaces. People aren't aware.
Well, see, what's interesting about the whole trajectory of this is that it was released in December of 2019. And because I used to work in the media, I understand how the media works. And I'm fairly good at pitching to radio stations, television stations, to print. We had an enormous amount of really great publicity. We were on CBC radio across the country. We were on local radio, on local television, in newspapers. And for the first 2 months of 2020, it was fantastic. The book was selling. People knew the title. They were asking for the title in bookstores and in libraries. And then, boom, what happened in March of 2020?
No idea.
Suddenly the world had more important things on its mind than getting prepared for the potential of going into long-term care. And I think people just put the whole thing up on the shelf. They said, yep, that's a great thing, but I don't have time to worry about that right now. So my hope is that once the pandemic well and truly does wind down, that people will come back to it and they'll realize the value of doing your homework now and getting proactive and getting prepared.
Where can people get the book? What's
they
it called?
Can get it It's called The Indispensable Survival Guide to Ontario's Long-Term Care System. I brought you a couple of copies to give away to folks you might think could benefit. It's available on Amazon.ca, on chapters.indigo.ca. You can find it on shelves in 10 different chapters / Indigo locations in Southern Ontario. And you can buy it by the box from me.
We might have to talk to you about that.
Yeah, we might.
So this is an investing show.
It is.
And these things are cheap, right? Long-term care homes?
Yeah, they don't cost much.
Okay. So I cost much because we were talking about before the show. So I was sharing with you before we started recording. I had two friends recently check in parents. Mm-hmm. One was paying $5,000. The other one was paying $6,000 per month.
Yes,
folks. Okay, so already I believe that amount is more than the average Canadian makes in a month. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a problem there for most Canadians.
Well,
and then my problem is I and you said that was mid-range, and I'm saying, okay, I want better than mid-range for myself and my mom and my dad.
Right. So let's contrast those numbers with the numbers that you would find. Let's say, for example, let's take our mother, my mother, for example. She went into a long-term care home that was run by the municipality in Niagara, which many of them are.
Nice location.
Some of these places are private, like Chartwell. Some of the big companies do operate long-term care homes, but she was in a municipally run long-term care home. The province regulates the monthly fees, depending on whether you're in a single room, a double room, or 4 beds in a room. Our mother was paying, I'm going to say in rough numbers, it was around $2,400 a month for all of her medical care, for whatever food she was eating, and for whatever PSW care she was being given. That was her cost, about $2,400 a month. But what most people don't realize until they go to visit someone in a long-term care home, or they have to put a loved one into a long-term care home, they don't understand what they're like. These are not fancy places. I mean, we were so fortunate. Our mother was living in a really beautiful place. It was, well built, nicely decorated. It was a nice atmosphere. But at the end of the day, it's a very small room. It's not the Ritz. So for $2,400, those are your living conditions. For people who are more used to, living their life on their terms and living in maybe a little bit more luxury than that, that's when you're having to go to the private places like an Amico or a Seasons or a place like that, where these monthly fees can be anywhere from, I'm going to say, $5,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 or sometimes more $1,000 a month. And also what a lot of people don't understand too is that that could be the base fee. If you need to have medication administered, that's an extra charge. If you want us to go get your mail every day, guess what? That's an extra charge. So what starts out as $5,000 or $6,000 a month could easily escalate to much more. And on top of that, if you're in what they call the memory care wings, where you're getting extra added supervision and care, of course that's an extra charge. So, I mean, it would be nothing to go, to approach $100,000 a year to be living in one of these homes where you are paying extra to be cared for on a deeper level than just someone who's just there as a retiree, let's say, or someone who's there because they need some additional help getting dressed in the morning. There's money involved. Mm-hmm. And I think this takes us by surprise mm-hmm. until it happens to us. Mm-hmm. And we can see through the experience we have with a parent or a loved one, like it really opens your eyes. It opened my eyes. I mean, I just realized, wow. I mean, if you want to spend the final days of your life in a place that's monitored by the government, where you pay $2,400 a month for everything, you can do that. But it's not a really nice way to end your life. And, at the end of the day, aren't we all here to have the best experience we possibly can for ourselves? Do we really want to settle for something like that? Mm-hmm. As an example, we're in the thick of summertime right now, right? There was a big controversy back in June, I think it was, that it is not, if you can believe this, it is not the law for every room in a long-term care home in Ontario to be air-conditioned. It is not the law. All they have to do to make the minimum standard is to have one room in the facility that is sort of like a cooling center, that is air conditioned, that you could be wheeled to, let's say, to cool down. Come on. And I've made so many phone calls to MPP's offices over this. I'm getting tired of saying the same thing again and again. How can you do this to elderly people? But this is the government we're dealing with. And the sooner we realize that and we just start to deal with it, the better. And personally, I think the one way we can all, as real estate investors, start dealing with this is realizing that, maybe it's time to buy a property, hang on to it for 20 or 30 years if you're starting young enough, and dedicate that money to be the money that helps you in the final stage of your life live in a nicer place.
Yeah, even all my investment properties have air conditioning.
Can you imagine an elderly person who maybe has circulatory problems or a heart disease or something that ordinarily they have trouble regulating their body temperature and breathing, and you put them in a room where, maybe there's a little fan working, there's no air conditioning? It's inhumane.
Yeah.
It's inhumane.
Yeah.
But it's happening, and I think it's time people have to realize this. This is the reality of our system.
Right.
And if you don't want that to be your reality when you're 85 or 90 years old, you got to start thinking now, how am I going to plan for that? What kind of money am I going to need? How should I make that money?
So whenever I take in information, I'm always like, okay, what do I do with it, right? And I'm usually motivated to take action. A lot of things I don't do anything about. Like, for example, like you're calling your MPPs. I probably won't do anything. But I'm gonna make sure that that won't be a problem for my parents, my family, or myself, and my family.
Right.
Right. So for the listener, so that's just to preface this. You are a journalist. You're used to doing research. You're not like an emotional person.
No.
Not someone that just follows the crowd. So what should someone do? So you mentioned someone should buy a house and hold it for 20 years.
Well, as an example, I know that you have said publicly that you have bought a house for each of your children when they were born, to provide for their future. What's wrong with turning that idea on its head and saying, hey, maybe I should dedicate one of these houses to take care of me when I'm 90? If I need specialized help and I want to be in a nicer place than what the government is going to provide for me, why can't that be a new habit that people could get into? I think it would be a great way to, to help provide for ourselves and to do it in a way that is, pretty practical. We're not waiting for money to drop down from the sky. We're saying, wow, if I want to be in a nicer atmosphere when I'm 90 and maybe need help, I'm going to have to find the money to fund it. I mean, people fund their children's education all the time. They fund vacation homes. I think we are at the point in our society where we're going to have to start saying to ourselves, okay, how am I going to fund the final stage of my life?
And then I think people, like you said, people will fund their children's education. They'll do like lots of things for their kids. And then for some folks, they've just planned to wait it out and try to wait it out, spend those final years keeping expenses down.
Hope for the best, right? We'll hope for the best. Well, it doesn't always work out that way.
And just a quick example, it's a bit morbid, but I'll just spit it out. Like a friend of mine just got back from the States. She was a nurse, so she signed contracts to be a COVID nurse based in the States. Part of the reasons why the hospitals weren't overwhelmed in the States is because not everyone has health care. Right?
Yes.
So folks who don't have health care, after they would explain to them that you're going to be hospitalized, you're going to be here for 2 weeks, and then there's a recovery period, people would check themselves out because they can't afford it, right?
Oh, heartbreaking.
Yes. And I'm sure that mentality will exist for people with long-term care as well, that they will not spend on themselves and they'll just fade away to not create a financial burden for their families.
Yes.
Right? So that won't be me. That won't be my parents. Right. My parents have done very well to take care of themselves.
Yes.
And then just even basic thing. If one of the basic things I think all parents should do is to not be a financial burden on your kids. Right?
Yes.
Forget where I was going with this. But anyways. So you mentioned there's some nice places to stay. So hopefully people aren't scared. There are some places that aren't so nice. And actually, a relative of mine is a social worker who does place people.
Wonderful.
Oh no, it's not wonderful.
Well, I'm sure they do a good job.
I'm sure she does a good job.
Yes.
But I believe her words were, "I would never wish to sell my worst enemy."
And what does that tell you?
Yeah.
What does that tell you? Let me say this. One of the things that so many families are unprepared for when the time comes is they've never gone to tour any of the local facilities in their neighborhood, right? Or wherever they would want their loved one to go. It's expected of you that you put together a list of anywhere from 1 to, let's say, 10 places that you would be happy having your loved one go into if they are declared what they call a crisis case. So because our mom couldn't walk all of a sudden, she's declared a crisis case, and that means that they work faster on your file to get you placed somewhere. We had never toured anywhere. We had no idea what these places were like on the inside. And when you go online and you talk about doing research, right? What's the first thing we do? Oh, we'll go to the websites of these places to see what they have. You would be shocked at the professionalism of the photographs that appear on these websites. Most of the time, no video, bad photos that are old, that are just posted because they had to post something. It is it's stunning to think that this is the only information that a lot of these places provide online to help you make a decision. So in the middle of COVID, guess what? You can't go and tour these places. It's not allowed. So I really feel for anybody who has had to make these decisions over the last year and a half without even being able to go inside the place to see what it looks like, or to be able to talk to the residents or talk to some of the staff, get a feel for what kind of energy is going on inside the place. Touring these facilities is one of the things that is so important, and we don't even know that it's expected of us to do this.
People are caught off guard.
Totally.
So how can people prepare?
Wow. First thing you want to do is, once things get back to some semblance of normal, is to make touring these facilities your top priority. Put together a list of, I'm going to say, at least 5 places that you would be happy seeing your loved one go into. And make sure that it is either in a special file folder, or we like to call or tell people or advise people that one of the best things you can ever do for yourself is to go to the dollar store and buy a spiral-bound notebook, and put it in a drawer. And we hope you never have to use it. But if that day comes that suddenly your mom or your dad, your grandmother, your grandfather, they are in some kind of medical distress, they need to go into long-term care, you pull out that book and you start writing everything down. Every conversation you have with every doctor, nurse, medical practitioner, every letter you get from the government, every piece of information that you are given from the LIN, which is the Local Health Integration Network. That's the organization that administers all the long-term care homes. And when it's your time to deal with this, you get assigned a care coordinator, which might be what your friend is. And that person is responsible for helping to guide you through the system. But here's the rub. A lot of the times, some of these folks are not so good at their job, and they don't give you much guidance. We kept expecting, this sounds so simple, but we kept literally expecting someone to hand us a colorful brochure that explained everything. And guess what? It doesn't exist. There is no one taking you under their wing. There's no one scheduling a Zoom meeting so that they can answer all your questions and make you feel comfortable and confident. It doesn't exist. The system isn't built that way. To my disbelief, they can't, these care coordinators, you'd think they'd be able to show you some kind of a portfolio for each of these homes that had photographs, maybe some video that you could access online, to explain to you what the home was like. It's not their job. They would look at you in the eye and say, that's not my job. There is nothing out there to help you make these critical decisions. So it's up to you. I mean, and we like to say that the system isn't going to change, so we have to. We have to take on the responsibility of being proactive and prepared and starting to do the homework now. Don't start doing it the second you get the phone call from the doctor saying that your mother can't walk anymore and you have to go into long-term care. By the time you get that phone call, I'm not going to say it's too late, But it's almost too late. I mean, you could have done yourself so much more of a favor if you'd started years before and laid the groundwork. I mean, it's like anything. It's like real estate. I mean, you don't see a house online and then buy it tomorrow. You lay the groundwork for moving into making that purchase and making sure it's in the right neighborhood and it's got all the right economic factors involved. It's the same thing with this. And honestly, the sooner people start to understand that this is the way it is and they actually start to do their homework, the better off they are going to be years down the road. They will thank themselves if they start now. And don't get me wrong, I know it's not the most pleasant task. I mean, nobody wants to confront their mortality or their parents' mortality. It's human nature for us to be uncomfortable doing that. But if we don't do it, we're going to pay for it down the line. And I'd rather feel uncomfortable for a little while now and have everything go really smoothly years down the road than to wait. And then just, so everything come at you like a ton of bricks. You don't know where to turn. You don't know who to talk to. You don't know who to ask for help because a lot of the time there is no one to ask for help.
So for the listener, I'm hoping that they're going to be successful. So say you have a budget that's over $7,000. What would you do with it? Over $7,000 a month.
Well, I mean, this is a different conversation. I mean, those people probably would not buy this book because they don't need it. They have the funding to be able to support themselves in a private facility that, we like to assume that the level of care and attention and the atmosphere is worth the money. I've heard from some people that it really isn't, and that they don't really get a higher standard of care in a place like that. I think the thing is, whatever care you're getting it in a nicer atmosphere. That's the key there. So anybody who has $7,000 a month, really, I don't think they have much to worry about. They can go to a private facility that's super swank. They have memory care wings that, if you have Alzheimer's or some kind of dementia, that you can, be accommodated in a place like that. I think life will be okay for you. Or conversely, if you don't want to go into a private facility, you could stay in your home and hire PSWs to come into your home literally all day long. That's another option that a lot of people like because they don't want to leave their house. Their house means security to them, and it feels good to be in their home. So that would be an option that they might choose if they had the funds to be able to support themselves like that. This book is really for families who don't understand the money that's involved, and they get just caught off guard by all the decisions they have to make quickly. Right. It's one thing to have 2 weeks to make a decision. It's another thing to have 2 hours to make a decision because someone from the government is on the phone saying to you, this bed is opened up. Do you want to take it? Yeah. You have 20. It's either 24 or 48 hours to decide.
Not much, yeah.
No, and if you're not ready, imagine you're not ready. You've never gone to see the place. Yeah. You've never spoken to anyone who lives there or anyone who works there. You're just like a deer in the headlights, and you don't know what to do. Those are the families that this book is for.
And that includes weekends, those hours.
Oh.
So if they tell you Friday, you got to be in there Monday.
And you have to be ready to move in 5 days. You know what? That sounds like a long time, but when you're trying to move and maybe someone's entire home or even living in an assisted living facility, you've got a suite that's full of memorabilia and sentimental things and things you got to pack. You got to find a mover. You got to find someone who operates a wheelchair taxi who can transport you to the long-term care home. There's a million decisions that have to be made in 5 days. It's nothing. And if you're unprepared for it, boy, you're going to have a hard time. You really are. I like to think of myself as a positive person, but when I put my journalist hat on, I understand that it's important to be able to give people the facts, give them the information that they need in order to make the best possible decisions for themselves. And this is one of those situations. You have to understand there's more to it than you imagine. And you don't want to leave it till the last minute before you start even thinking about it.
So we kind of touched on it. So along with not leaving it till the last minute, but planning for retirement financially.
Absolutely.
So what has your research led you to do in terms of preparing yourself financially?
For myself?
Yeah.
That's a great question, because I spent a lot of time researching possible places to retire to, going to visit those places, going to retirement conferences, that sort of thing. My strategy is to continue to invest in real estate such that by the time I'm 70, which is in 10 years, a little over 10 years, I will be able to cash out, invest the profits into some kind of a dividend-paying blue chip stock that will pay me if, let's say, I can accumulate $2 million in profits from the properties. At 5%, that's $100,000 a year. That's a pretty decent standard of living to be able to take and maybe go live in another country during the winter months, maybe rent places. And, there's all kinds of retirement talk about places like Panama and Ecuador and the Caribbean, Costa Rica,
Southern Europe. Yeah.
Sure, Portugal, all those sorts of places. I think there's a whole kind of a subculture of people in the world right now who are really focused on, where do I want to be in the winter? Where could I go where I'm going to have social connection with other people, and I'm going to be able to enjoy the warm weather and enjoy, being on the beach and eating good food and all those sorts of things. It's kind of like a full-time job to be researching all of this stuff. That's certainly one of my strategies. Also, I'm a hugely enthusiastic stock hacker, and I'd love to talk with you about that. You could not have told me when I first started with you in September of 2019. I was in on the very first course, and I remember it so well. I remember being fascinated by the whole concept of it, but until I was able to wrap my brain around all of it, kind of intimidated by, how do I do this? How do I jump in and start putting all of the philosophy into practice? And what happened with me was I borrowed $10,000. And I funded my account with a borrowed $10,000, and I started to do what I could with the information that I had at my disposal from that course. And I found it a tough go. And so eventually, after a couple of months, I decided to pay back the loan, continue to study, and to come back stronger. And luckily for me and for many other people, you were wise enough to know that there are all kinds of teachers out there and all kinds of different strategies out there, and you introduced us to Lee Lowell. And when I watched the videos of one of the courses that he had done with you, I love this phrase that you used. It really inspired me and motivated me. You said, you're going to have to grind it for a while. And I thought, wow, what a great way to put it. Yeah, you have to grind it for a while, because these concepts, maybe if you're a mathematician or someone who's, just drawn to numbers and you understand all these things, without any hesitation, maybe it wasn't such a big undertaking. But for somebody like me, I consider myself an excellent student. I'm very motivated. I love to study. I love to research. But even for somebody like me, it took me a good couple of months watching the videos, taking notes, being involved in the stock hacker meetings, talking to other people who were in the trenches doing it, which was hugely helpful to know that I wasn't by myself. There were other people, in there doing their best to learn it and to help other people understand it. I'm going to say January, February, I watched the videos, I studied, I took notes. February, March, I was involved in the stock hacker meetups online, talking to other people, listening to you, listening to the people you had give their presentations. And I started in earnest in April, I would say. And from April to now, which is just the very beginning of August, I have been able to profit on a pool of $10,000 of cash and $75,000 of borrowed money at a low interest rate. So that's $85,000 total. I have been able to take almost $20,000 in profits. And that is from doing nothing but what Lee Lowell tells me to do. The official trades and the unofficial trades. It even took me, and you will laugh at this because I know that you're a risk taker. It took me a while to even feel comfortable doing his unofficial trades, which anybody who's listening, what you need to know about Lee Lowell is that he's a extremely conservative investor, right? So even Lee Lowell's unofficial trades are more conservative than a lot of investors would even consider as a good trade, right? So it took me a while to even feel comfortable doing that. But just doing those two things, his official trades and his unofficial trades, that like almost $20,000 from April to August. I mean, that's extraordinary. And what does that do for somebody like me? I mean, I consider myself to be an educated, somebody who's part of the middle class, maybe the upper middle class, but still the middle class. What this means is, or the difference that this makes in the life of somebody like me, is that suddenly money isn't such a worry anymore. There isn't so much stress on figuring out how am I going to pay for that, or if that expense comes up unexpectedly, how will I handle it, or I can only have so many lines of credit. I don't want to max them out. I want to start paying them down. I mean, this has changed everything for me. And I will say this, that I think one of the reasons that I've embraced it the way I have is that I trust you. And I trust that you want to do the right thing for people. And you go out there and you find teachers and you find people who can come in and talk to us and help us to understand these concepts and help us to have the determination to keep working at it, even when we don't understand it, keep going, keep grinding it, right? I give all credit to you for feeling strongly enough about not just wanting to make money for yourself and your family and to make sure that they're provided for, but to want to help educate other people in that middle area, that middle part of society, that, they want something better and they're working hard at doing that for their families. But this is like, how many times have you said, get your phone out? It's right there. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times that I have actually done a trade while I've been on vacation, or like the last time I was waiting to get on a ferry in my car in the Maritimes, and suddenly I see the alert from Lee Lowell saying, hey, there's a trade. I go in my email, I find out, and like while I'm sitting there waiting to get on a ferry boat, I'm executing the trade. It's phenomenal to think that this is a tool that we can all use to help ourselves and to help other people. I mean, I want to make money to give it away. And what a great way to be able to accumulate the money that you can use to get yourself out of debt, to invest in whatever it is, if it's real estate, if it's options, if it's stocks, whatever you want to invest in, but then also to start focusing some of your efforts on using this tool to make money in order to give it away to people who need it. I couldn't ask for more.
Thank you, Karen. Made my day. It's still pretty early, though.
Well, let's hope.
That's why we recruited Lee Lowell to help us with the course. We knew there were issues with their earlier versions. That's why we went to the best-selling author who wrote the strategies, and also that's why we included his trades as part of the introductory course. Because if you just follow the trades, you should be able to stay out of trouble. It's
like 1, 2, 3, ABC.
Yeah.
You do what he tells you to do, or what he advises you to do. It couldn't be more straightforward. I won't say it's easy. It's straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if anything's easy.
I don't think anything's easy, really.
Right. So anything that's worth it is not easy.
No.
Right.
If anyone could do it, how does the saying go? If it was easy, anyone could do it.
Yeah.
Right?
I do think anyone can do it.
You do, and I think that's true, but you also have to have the intention to want to do it.
Yeah.
And then the determination to learn how to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it always comes up. I posted on my social media about it. There's a lot of people I know who are not interested in making money. Right? Versus me, I have all these fears. I have all these concerns, and I know inflation is real.
Yes.
Right? The government's telling you it's not. I don't know why.
I think that's what sets you apart, is that you understand economic reality. And most people don't. They don't understand inflation. They don't understand that their money isn't worth as much today as it was a year ago, and what should they be doing to try to help themselves. They'll probably never understand why it might be a good idea to buy some gold or to get interested in Bitcoin. What's that all about? Maybe that could help me. I think they're afraid. They don't want to lose their money, and they're not devoted enough to want to do the work of learning how it works.
Right.
Yeah.
I think everyone who's not investing is losing money.
It's very true.
Right.
Sure.
Anyone with kids, how is your kid supposed to afford a house?
Yes.
Right. And I say house because I want my kids to live in a house.
Yes.
Right. So do something about it.
Exactly.
Right. If nothing else, like people call it investing all the time. I started off just by hedging. Prices keep going up. What if my kids can afford a house? Why not just buy one? So then I hedge. As in, so if prices keep going up, they'll be able to have a house.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So my worst case scenario is covered. But people won't make the effort.
I think they won't make the effort to go beyond their comfort zone. That's part of it. I'm pretty used to doing that. I've been doing it for a long time. And I know you've been doing it forever. I think a lot of people are just so comfortable inside their little bubble that they don't want to, go to the time and the trouble and the effort and energy to learn how they could help themselves.
Yeah. I tried water skiing for the second time in my life this week.
Oh, and how did it go?
Painful. Because 20 years ago when I tried the first time in my life, it was extremely painful.
Yes.
Right? Crashing into the water while being pulled by a high-powered boat. It is painful. But I did get up on my third time.
But you know what? Something else I admire about you is that...
Tolerance for pain?
No, and you have to understand this too, that I think you're unique. There aren't a whole lot of people who can try something and fail, try something and fail, try something and fail, try something and lose money, try something again and fail, and say to themselves, I just have to keep learning. I have to find a coach who could help me. I have to find a teacher who could explain it to me in a different way that I can understand. I have to try it again. Most people give up after the first fail, but you keep coming back and back and back and saying, what can I learn from this? How can I put that lesson into play in my life? How can I take that and move forward and turn it to my benefit? And that's a great example for us to learn from. And I think it's an instinct that most people don't have because they're embarrassed by failure, or they give up because they think, well, it's not in the cards. But that's just so not the way to look at it.
Right. I also believe that anyone who doesn't share their failures is not being completely honest.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why I've shared, I lost a bunch of money in March 2019. 20?
Or 2019?
When COVID started happening.
2020.
Yeah, 2020. Wow. Doesn't seem that long ago.
I know.
But anyways, I lost a bunch of money in the crash because of the strategies I was following. And that's when I reached out to Lee. Like, there's got to be something better.
Yes.
And so I hired him to coach me privately.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right? And he opened my eyes to the holes in my strategy and the holes in my game. And then we tested them out and realized we needed him to help us with the course.
Yes.
Right? And that's how we went. And then, Derek is now...
Yes, I know, yes.
Yeah, so now, I don't think we've actually never announced it. Not on this level. But anyways, Derek Foster, who wrote the book, 6-time best-selling author, Canadian, retired Canadian. He wrote the book, Money for Nothing, Your Stocks for Free. So he'll be teaching one morning.
Which is super exciting.
Of course, yeah, super excited, right?
Yes.
It's just something my dad that always taught me was that there's always someone better.
But how cool is that? Because so often, people's mentality is, I think it's their ego gets tied up inside all of this thinking, and they don't want to embarrass themselves. So they wouldn't be transparent. They wouldn't say, hey, I lost a bunch of money, but then I hired Lee Lowell and we found the holes in my strategy, and look at me now. It wouldn't occur to them to look at it that way. I think your dad did you a great favor by teaching you that, or introducing you to that way of seeing the world. There's always someone better. There's always someone who knows more. There's always someone who could teach you and raise you up. That's a wonderful worldview to have, and it's a way of seeing the world that I don't think a lot of people have because their parents weren't in a position to teach them that.
I find there's lessons to learn from everyone. I remember when we were in university, my friend's crappy car broke down on our way to whitewater rafting. We broke down in Belleville? No, a smaller town than Belleville.
Brockville.
Something like that. We broke down, so we had to call CAA. We're getting towed. And so, we're in the cab of the truck with the CAA driver, so I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. What cars do you tow a lot of? Right? Because I want to know what cars to avoid.
What a great idea.
Right? And I won't name the brake names because...
Yep.
And then I asked him, what don't you tow a lot of? Because what brand should I be buying? He
Sure.
goes, and he named them off, right?
What a great idea.
Because, again, there's opportunity to learn from everyone.
Totally.
Right? Who knows better than the tow truck driver?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes. I love that philosophy. And I try to embody that in my own life.
And then we always continue to reach out to people. So yeah, we have Lee and Derek teaching the course, and then we have other coaches as well that we don't discuss just because we're in research and development. But yeah, I'm always trying to learn. I have 2 other coaches right now on stock hacking.
Do you really? Wow, fantastic.
Because there's so much to learn.
There is.
Yeah,
There is.
And the person who fails at anything is the person that fails to grow. Right? You ever think
So
you know
much
everything?
wisdom in that, yeah.
You ever, who? Like, for example, I train martial arts, right? Like the black belt I used to train under. He's the 3rd degree black belt. So, he's had his black belt for like 17 years, which is more than a lot of people have trained jiu-jitsu. And he would say, I'm only at 50%.
Don't you love that?
Right.
Humility.
Yeah. He's
Yes.
has black belt for 17 years.
Yes.
I'm only at 50%.
I love that, though. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, I'm a big fan of quotes. I have them in books all over the place. I write them down, and I love Bruce Lee. And that's the kind of thing that Bruce Lee would have said, And most people would say, well, you're a master. And in their minds, they would be so humble as to say, no, I'm just beginning.
And Lee that's why we get along with Lee so much. Well, is even though he's a 30-year professional,
I know.
Right? 7 years in the pits, right? Which is the highest level.
Yep.
He's still learning, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he asked us about like what are you picking up from these other coaches as well? He asked, and then he digs into it as well, and
Right.
And you see it in his own trading. Right?
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, he's always he's like. That's why we get along. Right? That's why we all get along. That's why I think most people who dig what we do, that they understand that we're always trying to grow.
Yes. And he is wonderful. I have ultimate faith in him. He's a great guy.
And then you, so could you imagine, go back like 5 years. Could you imagine? So you've actually written an article about this? Or you've written a couple of chapters of an ebook?
Started with yes. One day, a couple months ago, I just sort of woke up and I thought, my mom used to say, the spirit moves you. And I felt like the spirit was moving me to sit down and just start writing about everything that I'd learned through this whole process of learning about options and credit spreads and stock hacking in general. But because I'm a teacher and I'm actually going back to my teaching job in September, I thought, wow, how could I introduce this to young people who are motivated to want to learn about it? Maybe their parents are doing it and their parents are, want to expose them to it in a way that's easy to understand and something that they could pick up and read in an hour or so. I thought, wow, I could do that. So I started to just write this dedication to the book. And what I loved about it was that it gave me the chance to kind of look down on my life from up above and trace the influences that I've had in my life and why or how they've brought me to where I am now. And of course, certainly you're one of those people who I first encountered at RAIN meetings, many years ago when you were Mr. Hamilton, and you showed up in your Ticats jersey and talked to anybody who wanted to talk about Hamilton with you. And at the time, I thought you were nuts. You were telling people to buy houses on Wellington Avenue in downtown Hamilton, and because I come from there, in that neighborhood, because I come from there, I'd say, you're crazy, man. And all these years later, you weren't crazy. I mean, my gosh, those people who did what you advised them to do are reaping the benefits of it. So, certainly you were someone who influenced me. Don Campbell from RAIN, Tom and Nick Karadza. I mean, I've been exposed to all of these people, Jason Lowe, because of the fact that I met you all those years ago there. And that amazes me to think that, wow, you can connect all the dots. I was introduced to this person and they exposed me to that idea, or, infinite banking concept. I didn't know anything about that before. Now I do. I mean, if you told me 5 years ago that, 5 years later, I was going to be trading credit spreads on the options market and making money doing it.
On your phone.
On my phone, yeah. I would have thought you were certifiable.
Yeah.
And 5 years later, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
And which even surprises me sometimes. I think, wow, that is so interesting to just see how one thing leads to another. One person just encourages you to open your mind, to consider something you've never considered before, and to encourage you to learn how it works, and then to incorporate it into your own life. And once it starts to actually work, consider the idea of telling other people about it and try to encourage other people to be interested in it or to learn about it or to take a course and see if they can make it work for them too. Miraculous, really, the way your life just sort of flows from one thing to another, and you're like water, and your job is to just go with it.
So one of the reasons I like stock hacking is it's so much more accessible to folks who don't have a lot of capital. Like in your own journey, 10,000 cash, 75,000 borrowed. That's not really quite enough for a down payment for anything in terms of real estate.
Not now, no.
Right. And then you talk to like a millennial, a young person, like you're writing a book for teenagers, right? Like maybe they can scratch together a couple $1,000s, right? And then eventually hopefully grow it. Where I was going was stock hacking is so much more accessible for people without the financial assistance of usually rich parents.
Yes.
And they're not currently homeowners who've participated in all this price appreciation to be able to afford down payments for more real estate, right? So what are you telling kids? They're going to think you're crazy too.
Let me start with this. I don't know. Will they? Maybe they will. Sometimes kids they're just so, they have no disbelief, right? They're so willing to buy into something if you get the message across to them in an engaging way. I don't know. Maybe they will think I'm crazy. Before I get to that, one thing I can say is that, to your point about starting with not a lot of money, I was very inspired by Joel Arndt and his whole story and his whole journey. You've spoken to him a number of times, and during our Stock Hacker meetings, he's been online, presenting and talking about how he's doing. That's a great example of somebody who did not have a lot of money to start with, but who wanted to learn how it worked. And, if you made $300, if you made $3,000, it didn't matter. This is the money I have. I'm going to apply what I know and see how I can make it grow. And I remember it was either a Facebook message or it was a conversation with you at one point, and saying I was getting a little frustrated because I was just doing options. And I found that I needed so much margin that I wasn't making a lot. And I remember you saying, Joel is doing credit spreads. That's how he is maximizing his money. And really, that's what you need to learn. That's what you need to wrap your head around in order to advance. And I'm so grateful that you said that, because initially I felt like I had just wrapped my head around options. Here's how this works. Now you want me to learn credit spreads? What the heck is a credit spread? Right. But once I sat down and I watched the videos, I listened to Lee, I read, I actually prefer them. I like them better. That you don't need as much margin. They can be faster, very often. You can get in and get out more quickly. Again, kudos to you for spotlighting people who are starting at at the bottom of the ladder, as opposed to having the benefit of money from their parents or, family money or that sort of thing. That's very inspiring to people like me because, I have real estate investments and I work at a job that pays me well, but there's always a way to take what you have and to grow it into more. And to have this as a tool to be able to help you to do that is phenomenal. So, will teenagers think I'm crazy? I hope they think I'm really smart and that I listened to somebody like you who was also really smart and said, hey, why don't you consider this? And if you apply yourself to this, it's going to help you. If you're 17 or 18, and maybe you only have $1,000, you've saved it up from all your summer jobs over high school, you got $1,000. You know what? You can start with $1,000 and make a little bit every month and teach yourself how it works so that down the road, when you do start working and in whatever you choose to do, and you start making some money, just keep putting it aside, adding it to your trading account and keep going. I think it's a great strategy for young people who are, unfortunately growing up in a market that is not as conducive to home ownership as it was when you were younger, when I was younger. I think it's great. I hope they don't think I'm crazy. I hope they think I'm really smart.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully they don't. Because I gave a presentation to a bunch of grade 8s, I think.
Oh!
Yeah. I prefaced it a lot. I told the kids, your parents probably won't like this. I told the teachers, the parents probably won't like this. Because I don't have a great filter for some things, and I know a lot of people don't talk about these problems that we face.
Right.
Like we just talked about. Yes. Prices are not the same. They won't be the same for housing.
No.
Right?
So what happened?
The kids did well.
Did they?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
One of them asked me to mentor them.
Wow.
Yeah, that was funny. I'm not someone to do that. I'm not a teacher. That's why I hire people to teach. It was a lot of fun though. It was they're open-minded. And then just a point about inflation. I was hanging out with Andy Tran on the weekend, and he said if you just look, the central banks have all increased the money supply by about 30%, and lo and behold, real estate prices are up 30%. Right? Was
coincidence?
Right? Complete coincidence. Right? But there's no inflation. No. You know what? The first time I ever read about quantitative easing, I didn't understand what is that. Yeah. Quantitative easing. Just a name.
It's printing more money, right? Yeah. So when we run out of money, or when prices are through the roof and no one can afford anything, the government just starts printing money. Well, most people don't understand that.
No.
They've never been exposed to that idea, so they don't understand the urgency that's required to start doing something, taking some kind of action to help themselves. That's why I think it's so important to get younger people thinking about it earlier. And schools aren't necessarily known for being progressive in this kind of an area, but I think it's time for a revolution. Because if there isn't, what hope does a young person today have of owning a single family home? I don't know if they do have any hope.
Not with their rich parents.
No.
Right. It's actually, I'll introduce you to Candace later, who's outside this room, our intern.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So her computer programming teacher in high school told them 4 years ago, you need to buy some Bitcoin. Can you believe that a high school teacher said that?
Do you know what? Here's a quick story. I'm going to say about 7 years ago, I was teaching an English class, and there was a kid in the back row who's very funny, very entertaining. And 7 years ago, he was all over Bitcoin. And he kept saying to me, Miss, Bitcoin, you got to get yourself some Bitcoin. It's going to be the biggest thing ever. Yeah. And because we didn't know anything about it, we laughed him off. We told him he was crazy. Yeah. And if I had believed him 7 years ago and actually gone to the effort to learn what it was and, why does he think this and how much is it, I wouldn't be sitting with you right now. I'd be on a beach in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it probably would have been $10 7 years ago.
Would it have been?
I don't know. It'd be nothing. It'd be under 30, I'm sure.
Like, isn't that mind-blowing?
Yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. And I was the same. Like, I haven't been on the Bitcoin train until like last summer.
Yeah. I'm just now kind of, it's on my radar. I'm learning about it. What do I need to know? How could I get involved?
Mm-hmm. And then let's just say, none of this is advice, folks.
Yes, no advice.
In your own financial results, past does not predict the future.
That's right, yes.
But what do you tell people? Have you told people about what you're doing?
I've told one person.
That's it?
Yes. I've told a realtor, a friend of mine who lives on the East Coast, because he had a family member who had already talked to him about it. And I got into a great conversation with him about your teachers, your courses, why I like Lee Lowell so much. It's funny, I haven't felt comfortable telling anybody else because I kind of don't think they're ready to hear it. You know how you have to be there, you have to be ready to open your mind to it. Mm-hmm. And I haven't gone there yet with anybody else, but I'm sure that'll come.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me. So I just had my cousin on the show.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Right? And
Chubby, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he doubled his investment. He doubled his original investment in 18 months.
Amazing.
Right. So I'm going to share so when we're done, I'm going to share that episode with my cousins.
Yep.
See who's interested.
That's fantastic. See what happens, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because again, like people, I have many relatives who know that what I'm up to with my real estate, with my stock hacking, and still not that many people are interested.
I think they need to feel some confidence that it's the right thing for them. Mm-hmm. They underestimate the power of these philosophies, these principles to work in anyone's life. It's not just for the lucky people. Mm-hmm. It's for anybody who decides that they want to do the work, to understand it, to master it in some way, on some level, and to actually put it into practice in their life.
Mm-hmm. So what would you tell your neighbor? What would you tell someone who's willing to...
What do I tell my neighbor?
What would you tell someone who's open-minded?
Okay.
Because they're listening to this. People are listening to this show. They're likely already open-minded.
True enough. Yes.
You're listening to this show because you're one of the 17, 18 listeners. You're listening to this show.
You have more listeners than that, Erwin.
We may have gained one over the summer.
Yeah.
Already they're listening to this show. That already shows a couple things. Yes. They're interested in real estate investing, and they figured out how to open up a podcast on their smartphone.
Right.
So they're already open-minded. They're a bit more progressive than the average person. So what would you tell that person?
Here's what I would say. If I can take a trading account that's funded largely with borrowed money and feel confident that the training, the education that I'm receiving is preparing me to execute trades with confidence, if I can do that with borrowed money and make money to pay down the loans and to still make a profit, imagine what someone could do if they actually had a significant pool of money to work with, to trade with, how it could influence your ability to save for a house, your ability to pay down debt, your ability to pay for your children's tuition, their education down the road. Imagine what you could do if you had access to the money to fund an account. Maybe it's $100,000, maybe it's $200,000. It depends on what your situation is. But if I can start with borrowed money and still feel confident that as long as I follow the advice that I'm being given by Lee Lowell, and I have no doubt that down the road sometime I'm going to get more comfortable with a higher level of risk. So I'll take the next course up that prepares me to learn how to read charts and to do analysis in a more serious way. No doubt that I'll get there. But for the moment, if I can just take the advice that I'm given from the newsletter that Lee puts out for his credit spreads, doing his official trades and his unofficial trades, I don't lose a wink of sleep at night. I go to bed just rock solid confident that whatever he has decided is the best way to go is going to bear fruit. And if it doesn't, and if it goes south, I know that he knows how to fix it. What more could I ask for? I couldn't ask for anything more. I'm not relying on my own understanding of the stock or its motion on the market at all. I'm putting my trust in someone else who's been doing this for 30 years. And who's been educating thousands of other people around the world to help them understand how it works and help them to do it too. I could not ask for anything more, and I would just encourage you or if you were my neighbor or anybody who's listening, to commit yourself to learning what it is and how it works, and to put it into action and to see what happens. I mean, if you told me last year that eventually, in the space of 4 or 5 months, I would be able to clear almost $20,000 on a pot of $85,000, most of which is borrowed, I wouldn't have believed you. But because I've done the work, I grinded it. As you said, I did the work. I understand. I listen to Lee's podcasts. I read his newsletters. I do everything that I need to in order to be a good student. And I make the trades, and the trades work. That's all there is to it. I mean, to me, there's no hesitation at all. Should I try it? Should I not try it? Who else could I imagine would be in a better position to be able to guide someone like me on this journey than a man like him, who's been in the pit, for so many years, devoted his life basically to 30 years of working in the stock biz. How much more prepared could I possibly be than to have someone like that in my corner, guiding me, advising me, and for me to just keep chipping away. I pay back the loan a bit at a time. I allocate the money to other things in my life that I want to do and pay for. Wow, I mean, that sounds pretty, like paradise.
And then you played, so our friends Joanne and Paco came up with a board game.
Yes, great board game. I loved it. Yes.
Hopefully Joanne's here today because I know she wanted to talk to you.
I'd love to talk to Joanne, yeah.
So for the listeners' benefit, friends of ours who've taken the course, it's some people take to stock options very easily. Some people have a longer journey to get up the learning curve, and that's why they came up with a board game. Right? And then you've tried it.
I did. I played it. I think it was one of the first times that they put it out there for everyone to play.
Yeah, you're one of the beta testers.
Yeah.
And so we're actually rolling that out to be part of the supplemental learning. After the crash course, people will have an opportunity to play it during meetups.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And again, we're just trying to get people up the learning curve.
And you're making it fun. And, it's easier to learn something if you're having a good time.
So thumbs up.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, we're excited for it. We were inspired. Well, at least I was inspired by Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game.
I've never played it, but I certainly know of it. And I'm sure that's a great educational game too.
Yeah. Well, just high level, the game was mostly about educating people between the difference between what's an asset, what people think is an asset, and what are cash income producing assets.
Yes.
So, for example, hey, Karen, you win a boat. It also costs you this much money.
Right. In taxes, whatever. Yes.
Karen, you bought an investment property and it provides you this amount of cash flow. Like, oh, okay. Boat, bad. Income property, good. Okay. That's like the nutshell of the game. I haven't played it in years, but I probably should again. But another great example of engaging with people when they're young to get them thinking in this direction. Yeah. And again, we're just trying to cover every base we can cover with other learning tools. Try to get people up, and with the restrictions being loosening up, we're going to do meetups in person again.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I learn something every time I talk to people, and it's been good.
And I think the people learn something every time they talk to you.
Hopefully. Like what? And then, not to brag, folks, past does not predict the future, but I cash flowed over $2,000 when I was up at a resort this week. Right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
With your stock options.
Yeah. And actually, that amount covers the trip.
Isn't that amazing? Amazing. Yes. I mean, I've been in that position myself where I look at the figures and I'll think, that trade, how much money just landed in my account? Oh my God, that's like $800 US. I just made $800 US by pressing a button and doing the right thing, mind you, but pressing a button. Yeah.
It's worth the try.
Oh, I think it's an understatement that it's worth a try. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find this article that you're writing?
Nowhere. Not yet. I guess I have to sit down and set some goals. I've just honestly started working on it. So we'll see where it takes me, and hopefully I'll issue it as an ebook. And see where that goes, and maybe it could be a print book too.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
If you have any students you want me to speak to, I'll do the radar.
I'd love it.
Right. I'm supposed to speak to a whole school soon.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It's virtual, so it's not so bad.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. You can do that. No worries.
Yeah, the school does not allow. They're not sure when they're going to allow in-person guests. Right. Even though I'm fully vaccinated.
Yep.
Yeah. They're hyper cautious.
But that'll be great. I mean, don't underestimate how much of an influence you'll be on some of the kids in the crowd. I mean, not on all of them, but there'll be a percentage of them that'll just be fascinated.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Because the problem, I kind of wish I knew about these problems that we faced a lot earlier. Even just the basics that came out of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes.
The more money you make, the more you get taxed. All the people don't always feel this way, but if you just look at all the tax benefits to the investor, the government's almost pushing you to invest in real estate. Right. And that's the thing about all this hatred for landlords like ourselves.
Yes.
Is like they think we're just capitalizing on housing. But then again, if you look at the incentives to investors, tax-wise, the government's pushing us in this direction, right? And they set the interest rates.
And there's such a need for housing, with all the immigration and the explosive growth in population that's being forecast. Yeah. It's needed.
And some of them are tenants.
Yes.
Some of them are going to need some places to rent.
That's right.
And myself personally, I create more housing in each house I have, right? Yep. And I'll garden suite each house as soon as I'm allowed to.
Amazing, right? Isn't it?
I'm going to create more housing, like without any government incentive, right? I'm going to do it.
Yep, that's right.
So people can still hate on us, but at least we're creating supply.
I don't think there's anything to hate on. I mean, I know you get some haters, but I think anyone who's investing in real estate is performing a public service by offering people nice places to live during a time where it isn't so easy to find a nice place to live. Yeah.
And then hopefully be able to afford a nice place for themselves in retirement.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're such monsters. Karen, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, actually, karencumming.com. It is a website that's designed to promote mindful living, meditation, and self-care, and also promotes the idea that I'm one of the Mars 100, which is still going on. It's a legit mission to colonize Mars, and I'm one of 100 people from around the world who've made it to the final round of astronaut selection. And it's been a lot of fun. It's still in process. We'll see where it goes. But it gives me a great opportunity to talk to people about the ways that I think we could improve life on Earth, as someone who has the opportunity to potentially live on another planet someday.
So which organization is behind this?
It's called Mars One. It's a businessman named Bas Lansdorp from the Netherlands who initially made his money in wind energy. And he teamed up with a partner named Arno Wielders, who actually does work for NASA. And they decided that their dream was to send man to Mars. They didn't want to go themselves, but they wanted to send other people. And this was before anyone was talking about Elon Musk. It was before NASA was even coming out to talk about their plans for Mars. This was in 2013, so 8 years ago. He came out with this idea, and he asked people around the world who wants to come. So I give him a lot of credit. He got the conversation started. No matter what happens with the mission, it may go, it may not go. Obviously Elon Musk is going to get there before anybody else.
Do you think so, huh?
I think so, yeah. But he got people talking about it, yeah.
Would you go? Would you fly SpaceX?
Absolutely.
Right.
But he's not looking for, regular people. He's looking for astrophysicists and,
It can't just
rocket
be them.
scientists. Oh, yeah, it is. Trust me, Erwin. That's what he's looking for.
The entire community, the entire colony will just be
Yes,
them?
it will just be rocket scientists and astrophysicists. I know it will, yes.
Maybe the first few batches, but it can't be all of them.
Before they send a Tim Hortons up there. Maybe, yeah.
But eventually, everyday people.
Eventually,
Okay.
they're gonna like put out the invitation to young people
Right.
once they can determine whether or not humans can procreate on Mars. And if they determine scientifically that that is possible, then they will invite families to come up to Mars and actually create a society up there, which I find totally fascinating. Just the idea of it, and that this conversation is out there in the world, that it's possible, and that it's something that we're striving towards. I think is pretty cool.
So isn't the trip like 18 months to 2.5 years or something like that?
Interesting kind of trajectory. The trip itself is 7 months. That's what we've been told. But the window of opportunity for you to actually make the trip is once every 2 years. So they want to narrow down from 100 candidates to 24, divide them into 6 crews of 4, and send 1 crew every 2 years. So it'll take do the math. I think it's 24 years to get everybody up there and to get the infrastructure in place. And then at that point, they'll start inviting people from Earth. Do you want to come up? It's possible for you to have children up here. We've built the infrastructure. Here's how it works. What fascinates me is the opportunity to actually be part of experiments up there, to be able to document these experiments like a journalist for people on Earth, and as a teacher to be kind of like a Chris Hadfield sort of a person who was up on the International Space Station, engaging with young people and getting them interested in space. So many fascinating aspects of the whole idea of just regular people going up to Mars. I hope it happens. I really do. I
think it's going to happen.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, surely Elon Musk is going to be first, and he will start the society up and running first. But, there's room for all kinds of different players as long as they've got the money to be able to get up there.
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then any final thoughts you want to share with folks?
Yeah, I'd like to just say, well done for listening to your podcasts and for devoting time or blocking time out of your schedule as often as you're able to do it, whether it's once a week, once every couple of weeks, a couple times a month, to listen to the people that you talk to. Because, for a long time, I earned my living as a radio and television broadcaster, and I talked to a lot of people, interviewed people, and I always got so much out of the conversations, and I would find them inspiring in some way, or they would motivate me to learn about something I'd never learned before, in some way to help make my life better, and by extension, to make the lives of the people who are listening or watching better as well. And I think that that's what you do on this forum. You talk to people who share their story, and it's not always a bed of roses kind of a story. It's the bad things and the good things that have happened, to inspire those who are listening to take action in their own lives, to do something that might help themselves and their families live a better life. So I just encourage everybody who listens to you and who watches these podcasts to keep doing it, because this is it's just a great forum for learning. And I think that one of the reasons we're all here is to learn as much as we can from each other. And you do a wonderful job of getting that learning out there and encouraging people to want to educate themselves and to keep at it and be consistent at it. So just keep listening and keep watching, everybody.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Erwin. This was so much fun.
Thank you for coming to share.